guys, my name is Bando, this is Brexit Bando, and today I'm doing a video just because someone asked on making terrain. So I sped the video up because it was getting way too long, so my hand movement's going to be all over the place. I may not talk about the right thing at the right time. So yeah. So starting off, I have this resin cast tank. We had a good time trying to figure out what sort of tank it is. It's actually a Chaffee, a US Second World War tank, and I picked this up from one of the trade shows I went to, like Salute or Reading Warfare, and I really like getting these sort of garage kits. These are made by guys, usually themselves. They're cast. They're not made by big companies usually, and they're quite cheap. The other thing I quite like here is there's some guys selling like miscast 3D prints or misprinted 3D prints. And they sometimes go really cheap, but if you're just using them for terrain, that's great. The other thing I like to use, I use a lot of MDF, so that's what I'm going to be basing here. This is like 2 or 3 mil thick MDF. Some people don't like using it. Don't mind really, because some people they find it warps, and so yeah, they just find it a bit annoying. So all I've done is just mark out where the biggest piece is and sort of the rough shape I want to use. And then I'm just going to cut that out basically. Then I'm going to use a load of extra little resin bits. These are things I just pick up from time to time. Boxes, dead bodies, that sort of thing. Again, unfortunately, no idea where these came from because they're usually just sold in little plastic bags from trade shows. And they're useful for things like environmental storytelling, breaking up line of sight, adding a bit more interest. So I'm going to use a load of them. I've got off-cut legs, barbed wire. I don't think I used the barbed wire in the end, or the chain. And yes, the tip of my fingers are blue because I've been spray painting Night Lords, which are now finished, by the way. That's how long this video has taken to make. So you can see here, I've cut this off really rough. If you've got access to like power tools, a jigsaw would go through this in seconds. I ended up having to actually use just a craft knife, so be careful when you're cutting it. It's a good way to do it is to score it and bend it. And then what I've done is, you've seen me use them before, I've gone in with some of these emery boards. And the emery boards are like the really heavy duty nail files almost. And this is the one for like the heaviest duty one, the one that can just tear things apart. And all I'm doing is kind of putting a sort of bevel on the edge, smoothing out the corners, rounding things off, generally just making things look a bit nicer. What I'll do after this is I'll go in with a slightly higher grit one and just smooth things down. And one thing I will say about this, try to do it in a ventilated area. Try to wear a respirator if you're doing anything like this. Anything with a lot of fibres, with a lot of dust. You really want to protect your respiratory system there, guys. I don't a lot of the time. I'm really stupid. I really should. I'm not proud of what I do. But, I'm an idiot. Self-avowed, self-confessed, total idiot. So don't do what I do. Make sure you wear the proper protective equipment when you're doing this sort of thing. The other thing is, maybe put some paper down or use a box to catch it all, because this does make a lot of dust and it can be a pain to clean. So yeah, I just spent a little while going over this, round and round and round, just taking the edges off. It doesn't come out perfect for me in this one. It's been better in the past, but I was doing this kind of a bit quickly. Sometimes I'll use a knife as well if it's not too, if it's a bit there. So you can see here I've been laying out the parts, and I kind of sort of don't glue them down. I just keep moving things around how I want them until I'm happy, and then, I use some super glue. Now you can use super glue here, or you can use hot glue. Don't use PVA for this. And I'm just going to add some more some more touches. So I've got an I-beam, which is just a piece of plasticard, and I'm going to cut it to the length I want. And then I'm going to use a lighter to just gently sort of heat it up, because I want to put some like bends and like dents in there. So I use my desk and bend it, just to make it look like it's taken an impact. And then cut it sort of to a 45-degree angle and stick it down. It's all about thinking about what's happened here. And for me, it's a ruined city. It's a city that's, survived an atomic blast, and now it's had people fighting through it, and now the city's abandoned, and they're dead. This was a fighting position at some point, and the guys have all been, the bodies are left behind hundreds of years ago. These bricks, they're little plaster-made bricks, and you can find them on eBay if you just type modelling bricks. I think Warlord Games making some now as well, and you can get them in all different scales. As you can see, these are already leaving little white marks because they're only made of like plaster of Paris. So they're a little soft. I don't know why I'm sticking my pinky up so much in this video. So what I want to do with these is I want to stick them down with super glue anywhere I think that they're going to go. Anywhere that I think is a bit more interesting. I generally try to put them towards the edges of things so they're out of the way. And I'm not being precise, I'm just piling things on here, because these are going to get several coats of PVA glue over the top as well. You have to kind of coat these things with PVA glue because they are a little delicate. And you want to put PVA and you want to put some varnish over them when you're finished. They're good for blending things in, and that's what I'm trying to do at this point. Is I'm also kind of trying to blend the edges of these other resin bits so they don't just look like they're stuck on. Because if I was just to sand this and then paint it, it would just be, there's the box, there's the tank, there's the bodies, and it wouldn't look very good. Then I'm just using that wet super glue and just tossing on some fine sand, and using that to soak up the super glue, but also stick down. That means I'm not wasting any glue, and it helps get into the edges or cracks and crevices around the bricks and stuff. Every time I did a step in this, I would have to leave this to dry for about an hour and a half. So it was basically one of these steps a night almost I was doing. So this has taken me a while. And I'm talking about my absolutely gross candle because I was just burning things in it because it's near the end of its life. Because I'm a weirdo. So next up, what I'm going to be doing is, once this is dry, we're going to get rid of the excess sand, and then I'm going to put some PVA glue down. And the PVA glue is going to be used so we can put down more sand. Everything's nice and secure. I did have to reattach one of the boxes. It broke off, so I actually pinned it in place this time, so it's not going to go anywhere. And yeah, just regular craft store PVA. You can use wood glue. Wood glue is generally a better option to use on MDF because it doesn't warp as much. And generally, I try not to use too much of it. So I've just used an old, brush, wide brush. And I've not even knocked the sand off because all I'm going to do is mix the sand in with PVA glue. You can see some of the bricks are still loose as well. I really am I'm not being clean or clever or neat and tidy because I don't need to be. I'm not making, I'm not making some perfect replica of, Edoras or the Imperial City. I'm not Zorpazorp making some piece of art or anything. I am making a piece of gaming terrain, so I'm going to be mucky with this. And yeah, I mean, this is a regular dry brush I still use. You can use older brushes, just as long as you wash it out and take care of it, clean it with some soap. It's never going to be a detailed brush. It's always going to be a larger, rough brush. But yeah, it's just PVA glue. You can wipe it up with water afterwards. And just, try and getting it into all the cracks and crevices because you don't want to leave any areas where there isn't going to be sand. And my job, again, with this layer is going to be to try and blend in the parts, the other bits, to make the stuff look like it belongs there. If you go and have a look at somewhere where something has been sat for a long time, it's not just sat there. It's kind of got, things have moved around it, things have rolled up against it, dirt and stuff has scuffed up into the side and is kind of, it blends everything together a bit. I got some finer sand. Why does it look like it came from IKEA? I don't know. This one's a little coarser. It's almost like gravel, or like it's almost like glass shards almost, because it's like weirdly crystalline. But it doesn't matter. You can just use any sort of sand or anything. Don't go and buy branded sand. Just seriously, eBay is the best place to buy modelling materials like this, because you can go and buy a kilo bag of sand, coarse sand, fine sand, large sand, mixed sand, and it's not going to cost you a fortune. Compared to buying something like an Army Painter branded one, or a Games Workshop branded one. You really don't need them. They're nothing special. They're the exact same material, and they just rebag it and stick their label on it. So you kind of owe it to yourself to really save yourself as much money as possible. So this stage is going to go off and dry again, and then I'm going to do another one, basically, of the same thing, where I'm just going to keep trying to blend it together. And you can see it's rock hard here. It will get another coat of PVA over the top when I seal everything. And yeah, you just come in, do some more, stick more bits in wherever you need it. And the job is to try and just make things look believable. If people are walking somewhere, there wouldn't be large rocks in that area. They will get knocked out of the way, people will move them, or they won't walk in an area with big rocks. So you kind of have to think of it a bit like that. So yeah, back in with more PVA glue. I use what are they called? Plastic lids. I use them as mini containers for everything from glue, paint. I stick models to them. I probably get more use out of a bottle cap after I've drunk a bottle than I do any time before. Like I probably recycle by reusing these things more than they would legitimately get used by being recycled. I have a glass full of them next to me. And no, it's not from me drinking all that. I get them from my parents because they still drink a lot of that stuff. Yeah, this time I'm kind of more focusing on areas, like edges and areas I want it to have, a heavier amount of sand on, places that still need blending into the scene. And you don't need to water down the PVA, you just use it straight up as is. And then, yeah, this time I'm just going to drop the sand on my hand rather than pouring it on from the bag, just because I can be a bit more accurate this time. So this is probably the fifth or sixth piece of terrain for this setting I've done. This is actually, it started as a ruined city for my Second World War board, and became the setting for my Shattered Legions, which is a kind of 20th century-esque human planet that refused compliance and tried to fight the Blood Angels with atomic weapons. And lost. So everyone was wiped out, and now the Shattered Legions have gone back because it's a dead world and they're hiding there. So it's lots of overgrown stuff, lots of rusted out vehicles, abandoned fighting positions, ruined and burnt buildings, that sort of thing. And I've got quite a few of them. Eventually what I'll do is I'll do a showcase of all the terrain together. Maybe I can do everything else like that. So, next up I gave it a coat of actually just using craft paint. This was, again, cheap craft paint, and I gave it 2 coats. It didn't cover particularly great over the resin parts. That's kind of to be expected. But it didn't really matter, because it's just there to give me something to work off of, and a little bit of darkness. The shadow to work off of. If it was a desert piece, or if it was something else, like maybe it was ice and I was doing blues, I'd start from a grey or a white. But because it's going to be an urban setting, the black just helps give me my shadows. I use craft paints because it's cheap. It's really cheap, and I don't want to waste modelling primer on this. Not because it is a lot of paint. And I'm just using I'm still using my TT Combat paints. It's been about a year now I've been using these, and I'm still quite happy with them. And yeah, just a kind of heavy dry brush. It's not even like a dry brush. I think we used to call this technique overbrushing, and it's like dry brushing, but you don't really get rid of any paint off of your brush. But you just use the action of the dry brushing action to keep the paint moving and not over clog any detail. And yeah, just trying to get all the little nooks and crannies where there's a little bit of the resin showing through. This was nearly an hour and a half long when I first started this video, and I've cut bits out of it where it's ridiculous. So yeah, I don't know what to say in this. I'm painting. Insert music here. How was everyone's Christmas? I hope it was great. I got a 3D printer. So expect a video on that coming up at some point. So the brown is just going to be brought up quite light. Old wood that gets wet and then dries and gets wet, it bleaches, it goes very pale, and then it will get lots of washes with browns and greys and greens for all the grime that's just all over it. And don't worry, this isn't going to win any gold demons. This is a really basic piece of terrain. I'm just trying to show to you guys that it's not difficult to make terrain. If you can paint your Space Marine, you can paint a piece of terrain quite easily, and you don't have to buy an expensive plastic kit for your terrain, and you don't have to stick to the tournament like 3 L-shaped buildings either. Really have a go at building thematic terrain, because you can have more fun that way, showing a story that's going on, and having more terrain, having more like line of sight blocking terrain and stuff. It, in my opinion, makes the game more fun. If it's all just pile into the middle and roll dice, I don't think that's very fun. But you may find that really fun. So that's up to you. So all I'm doing now is I'm stippling and dry brushing over another brown. This is a slightly redder brown because the tank is rusty. And I'm going to be doing this with a couple of browns and some oranges just to bring up a rusting. If you wanted, you could use something like a rust effect paint, but I wouldn't, because they can be a little delicate, and they also lose some of their effect once they're varnished. And frankly, everything they do, you can kind of do without them. So yeah, just stippling on. Stippling, if you don't know what stippling is, it's basically you paint by tapping the brush up and down onto the surface. This makes like little dots rather than brush strokes, and also adds a little bit of texture. It makes the paint have some texture to it. It's a great technique to learn. It's one of those techniques you should look at learning after you've sort of got dry brushing down, because you can couple it with things like glazing, which is again another really important technique to add fantastic texture to your paints. So this is an orange brown, and all I'm going to be doing with this is painting things like the bricks, and I'm going to go kind of rough here because they're going to get a lot of stuff go over the top of them as well, and then I go back and repaint them. But this is how I do my bricks. They'll get dry brushed, which will help blend them into the scene, and then I can pick them out again anywhere that they really should have clear orange bricks. And again, I also use this paint for a couple of other things. I use it as a wash all over the model, or not all over the model, but in areas around the model to show where the brick dust is, and also for sort of the spots of rust as well. It's one of the last, it's the second to last layer I use on my rust usually, and it's just it's Vallejo's orange brown, I think it's called. And I've watered it down, but I've not watered it down much. Just enough to make it flow. This isn't one of those things where you need too thin coats. You're not trying to preserve huge amounts of detail on the model itself. And also the thicker paint helps protect the quite delicate plaster brick pieces. Which, if you are interested in those, you can also find silicone molds to make them yourself. And you get to enjoy the joys of plaster of Paris modelling, which can be really, really messy. So if you really want to wind your parents up, that's a great one to do in the kitchen. Okay, so I've done the bricks, and now we're moving on to adding some of this orange onto the rust. And I've watered it down, and I've actually added a little bit of sort of red into it, just to warm it up and give it a bit more depth. And I'm painting both the tank and the I-beam. And again, I'm not being precious with it, I'm not being careful. The faster and rougher I work, the more random it appears, and the more the sort of the effect of the lie that is the painting kind of comes into place. Because that is effectively all we're doing with painting, is we're trying to trick the eye into thinking this is something that it's technically not. Really focusing heavily on like the recesses, because that's where the brighter rust is generally going to sort of be. If you get a chance, if you know when you're walking in the street, you see like a skip or something, just have a quick look at the rust, see how it looks. It's always quite interesting to look at that sort of stuff in real life. Look at how stone gets weathered, how rocks in nature have moss growing on them, because you kind of have an image in your head of what those look like, and it's not actually accurate. You're not actually remembering what you've seen. You're remembering the last time you remembered it, and it's not accurate. It will be wrong. So it's always good to sort of have reference photos, to actually have seen things in real life, to understand what you're trying to paint and how it's happened as well. That's the other really important thing, is knowing why something looks the way it does, because that way you can kind of extrapolate sort of what it would look like in your situation. Why is, or this is a weathering pattern, people walking over painted metal, the paint's going to wear off. Why does it do this? Why does it look like this? Oh, okay, I know these guys are going to be walking across here, so that's where I should put my weathering. So it's long-winded and really hipstery artish kind of ramble there, but yeah, I've got a folder full of reference photos of things like rust and stuff I've taken. I don't use it as enough as I should. But yeah, just trying to not overpower it because I want to keep the layers below it. And it's not the last time I'll do this. I will go back and do some more later as well. Okay, so what I think I'm going to be doing next is probably going to be doing the grey. I'll be dry brushing Shadow Grey by Vallejo's, I think it's Game Air, or yeah, it's Game Air Shadow Grey, I think it is. And all I do is a couple of layers of dry brushing. I don't think I recorded it because it's quite a boring process. You can see here, the turret of the tank's been blown off. It's just filled with rubble. You know, maybe a building's collapsed in this area. It's not something that's been cleared out. You know, this position was clearly abandoned. I have no idea what I'm saying about the boxes. I really don't. The bodies, yes. So the bodies I don't paint. I will dry brush them some neutral colours, browns, greys, that sort of thing, greens. And I just, because I don't want the focus to be on them. I want them to sort of blend into the background. Because that's what they are. They are forgotten. They're bodies that are just laying there. They haven't been... They're not the focus of it. The focus for this is the tank. And that's what I want the eye to go to on this piece of terrain. So, here you go. I have dry brushed over the grey. I've dry brushed over the grey with a little mixture of a lighter grey in there. And then what I've done is I have gone back with a green and with the orange brown. And I've just added some just splotches in places. Anywhere that brick dust, rust has run off onto it. Anywhere that something's growing like mold or algae or anything like that, I've dry brushed up the boxes with a sort of tan colour, and then I've washed them with the browns and the greens as well. And again, it's because they've been out in the weather forever and they are just kind of gross. And now what I'm thinking I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be sticking down my phlox, things like my grasses and my phlox and everything. And I don't do any bare metal on here. There's no chipping with metal because what's been there to chip it? Nothing. This is an abandoned planet. It's a dead world, so nothing's chipped it. There's going to be no bare metal. Anything that was bare metal is going to rust pretty quickly. You know, so that you only really see the bare metal if someone has moved over something. You know, they've scraped it in some way. So I don't need to worry about that stage like I would with, say, a model. I'm pretty sure this is a bit where I knock it over as well. Anyway, I've got a myriad of phlox and grasses. Back onto the old PVA glue. I've got some tiny leaves. I do love my tiny little leaves to add some detail. I do forget to do it until after the video for this, but they are in the pictures at the end. And again, I'm just thinking, where would things grow? And generally things grow in crevices. They grow in recesses. They grow in places where they've got a little shelter, but they can still get light. You know, it's again, it would be very weird for plants to be growing somewhere where anyone's going to move. And it probably wouldn't grow straight out of, you know, concrete unless the concrete's broken. And I just used a pair of, you know, tweezers just to place down some weird phlox. And yeah, this is... Can't remember where this came from. Actually, I think I do. I think this came from Eclectic Games in Reading. Lovely little store if you've ever been there. Lovely couple that runs it, and they do a games night there as well. So if you live in the Reading area or sort of Berkshire, that sort of way, it's definitely a nice place to go. A pot of citadel grass which has lasted me for ages. Absolutely ages. So I try to keep the two different grasses apart. You know, they're growing in different areas. They're different species of grass. And these ones I'm also putting on top of the boxes because they're growing into the wood, that sort of thing. Now, you don't need to use something like an expensive um, applicator, like static grass applicator. That really isn't something you need to worry about. And you could, of course, just use tufts for this if you've got any tufts. I know a lot of people really like using those because they're nice and self-contained. I've got some. I don't really use them that often. I'm going to see if I can start using them a bit more. But yeah, really, if you're doing static grass, especially for us, putting it down with some PVA glue, letting it dry a little bit, and then just blowing on it to get rid of the excess will also make the strands stand up. If you do it before the glue is completely dry, there we go, I knocked it over. If you do it before the glue is completely dry, it will stand up sort of a bit better, and you can see it. And then again, just come in with the old tweezers and just plop it down. More the merrier. Is he going to knock it over again? Now, sometimes I would actually do this stage before I've primed it. And that's something I'm going to cover in a video in the future. If I didn't want to use these shades of green, I will place the grass down before I've primed the models when I've based them. Because then when I've primed them, I can paint them using my airbrush, and I can use that to make better blends. I can change the tone, I can add patches of lighter and darker grass, I can show areas where the grass is dead, I can show areas where the grass is burnt, that sort of thing. And it is quite fun. It's also nice to do because sometimes you can't get the shade of grass you want. Maybe you wanted to do like a really bright, just sort of post like summer rain, really vibrant green grass like you'd get here in the UK. Maybe you want to do sort of a more yellowy savanna grass, and what you've got doesn't match. It doesn't mean you have to then just give up with what you've got and go buy new products. You can, mix and match. You can change it yourself, and also you can use things like aquarium plants. I've had aquarium plants. I've also used some twigs and stuff I found in the garden, or not my garden because I haven't got a garden, where I've painted them as well. And here I'm just going to make some long grass. Now I use this yellowy stuff and I bend it over into a loop, and I just give it a couple of drops of super glue and twist it. And that way, what this does is it sticks the strands together. And then what I can do is cut them up with my scissors, and I've got two kind of long, reedy things. All I've done there is use some water on my fingertips. Water activates super glue. That's why it sticks to your fingers so easily, is because of the moisture. And there you go. I have just created two sort of reeds, or whatever you want to call it, stalks of grass, and I will stick them into the model. What I usually do is drill into the model, and then put the thing into the hole just so it sticks a bit better, and then you can use some grass to like camouflage the hole a bit. Again, I'm drilling into resin here, so I really have to repeat myself. If you are drilling, filing, sanding resin, you really want to be wearing a mask. It's not the smartest thing to do. You're gonna have a bad day if you keep doing it. Again, I have to stress, I'm an idiot. Okay. Little dab of super glue, and now you might think these are absolutely massive in scale, and they are. They are absolutely huge. If that's what you want to go for, that's fine. But once these are dry, what I do is I will trim them down with some scissors, and just cut them to the length I want. It's the same thing I do for my bases. And this one I think I just stuck into between some boxes or something. Yeah. And again, the super glue can dry a bit white, so you might want to just touch up with paint when it's dry, or cover it with some extra grass or something just to hide it. So more or less, that's actually finished. I give it 2 coats of gloss varnish for protection. I give it a coat of matte varnish to dull everything down. And the matte varnish, I always do this stage afterwards, after I've put the grass down, because it blends everything together a bit better. So it all kind of sticks together, not sticks together, but the colours kind of blend together. It all gets the same effect. You haven't got like something's really glossy next to something matte, and it makes everything look like it belongs to the same universe, like the same area. And as Mitch has pointed out before, you can tell this with all my models. All my models kind of have the same aesthetic. They all look like they are in the same universe, and that's why I do all this. It's why I paint the same way in all my armies. And, you know, I do want to paint differently at some point, but that's how all my heresy stuff is always done, in the same manner. It's why I use the same weathering powders, the same weathering oil paints. Here you go, I'm becoming the world's worst hairdresser. And you don't want to keep it completely straight. You do want to kind of feather it in a bit, chop a few off at different lengths, and kind of spread them out a little bit. So that should be it. So what I've done is I've taken a few photos at the end, and yeah, you'll get to see the finished deal with leaves and everything. So let's take a look at those. So, yep, here we go. These are the finished images. I've used some Raven Guard who are based in the same way to kind of showcase it, and you can really see how much bigger Space Marines are than normal people as well, because these are properly scaled for like proper 28mm, not heroic 28mm. I do like my Raven Guard. It is one of those forces that I keep kind of forgetting about, which is probably something that's, you know, probably something the Raven Guard quite enjoy. Because they're all put away and I don't really have them out very often, and I need to finish them. So you can see Sergeant Saphir here sat on top of the tank as well. I made a load of guys using the more Dathan models, because I really like them, and I'll probably get another set at some point to do a load more of them. So if you guys have any questions about the terrain, if you have any questions on how I did anything, if you need me to go over anything again, you can see here the leaves are on here as well now. These were just stuck down with PVA glue and then given a coat of PVA glue to seal them in again. I will admit they are a little delicate sometimes. You may want to stick them down with super glue. But yeah, if you have any questions, please just ask them. If you guys have any terrain you want to share with me and you want to show me your stuff or ask me questions about, ideas that you've got, come join our Discord and stick it in there. And, as always, I want your feedback, guys. I love having the conversations with everyone. So please let me know what you think. If you like the terrain, let me know. If you don't like the terrain, let me know. If you don't want to see any more, that's great. If you want to see more of this terrain, just let me know in the comments. Or, message me on Discord. Alright guys, I hope you had a great Christmas, and I really hope we have a great 2025, and I look forward to the new year with you guys. Have a great day. One more day to the weekend. If you're back to work today, or, Friday, I feel bad for your son, but I'm there as well, so. So have a great day. Thanks for watching. If you got all the way to the end, just say brick in the comments. Alright, I appreciate you. Bye-bye.